In episode number 414 of the Reasons I'm Broke podcast, we cover the return of the Walking Dead comic book.
We also have the highlights of Zack Snyder's interview on Beyond the Trailer.
Our comic book highlight this week, as voted on by you, is Batman number 95, which is Joker War Part 1.
All of this and so much more on today's show.
Hello and welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week, ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I am Tuber Daniel.
Tuber? Have you ever been tubing?
I have at the Disney's, what's that water park? The one that has the lazy...
tubing.
That's not tubing?
No.
All right, well,
Tubing is when you're in a Florida lake and you're either going to get stuck in some mangroves or you're going to get eaten by an alligator.
I've not been tubing then.
It's pretty cool. We should go. Sometimes you feel seaweed and you're like, is this death? I don't know.
See, as a non-native to Florida, the most tubing, I don't even think there was tubing at Six Flags Great America up in Chicago, which was the only theme park really up there.
Okay, but like the point of tubing is it has to be in a real body of water. If you go to a theme park, there's no danger.
I never knew tubing was an extreme sport. Jesus Christ. Fucking taking shit over tubing.
I'm Papa Kelli.
The way we format the show is first we go through some news. We head into our What's New on Netflix since it is the final episode of the month. Our Patreon shoutouts of the week as well, which are thank yous to those who make the show possible. And finally, we end it with our comic book highlight.
But our first bit of news comes from the comic book world. The Walking Dead comic is returning this October through a deluxe edition of all 193 issues, but this time in full color and bonus material like who cares?
I like Image Comics a lot for this. In the world of we have two Marvel Comicses, I'm investing way more into the independent publishers like Image, like Boom Studios, like IDW, Aftershock. And I think this is exactly what not only comic shops needed, but what Image needed as well. Ever since they stopped the Walking Dead comic through that surprise 192 or 193 issue, I know that part of their pie has been taken by these other independent publishers, which is great. I do think that less books need to be published by all publishers overall, but a staple to the comic book world, and I think one that still has plenty of juice in it, is The Walking Dead.
This will be the second time the originally black and white The Walking Dead has been colored. For the series' 10th anniversary in 2013, Image and Skybound released a new edition of The Walking Dead #1, colored by Dave Stewart.
The title will release twice monthly and will feature full recolors of each cover.
Image currently has no plans to collect these issues into trades or hardcovers. I don't see why they wouldn't at some point, right? Especially if this is successful and people are picking them up again.
I think they definitely will. From the look of their first issue, there's going to be a variant to each cover, and it's essentially a recreation of the original cover as done by a new artist, which I think is a really neat idea. So you can kind of pick up like the modern cover, or you can get the classic one but recolored.
While I may not care about this, I do definitely think it's smart, especially right now with how the world is, because people are going to gravitate towards, oh, I really liked Walking Dead. Let me go back towards that nostalgia, because even though I've already read it, here's a new way, a new spin on it.
My boss was telling me that he remembers back when The Walking Dead Weekly got launched and everyone was saying this is unnecessary, it's not needed. And then they ended up selling out for weeks because everyone came out for it. It was like an unexpected hit for them. And I think this is going to be one of those as well. I think that The Walking Dead Recolored, I've already had several subs that are like, they can have my money twice, and they're already trying to sub to it.
That's awesome. We do have a quote here from one of our brokettes, though, at Brian Shoup1, who says, quote, I will not. I enjoyed this series and its classic black and white, just don't see a need for it in color. Saw some of the panels, and I personally think it loses the feel, end quote.
I know Brian was a subscriber to the Walking Dead book up until the very end. And what I've been doing each week on Twitter now is putting out kind of a snippet of the stories that we're going to be covering and asking the Brocat Corps to come forward with some opinions or thoughts on it. And we do have several responses. So we got one here from Brian, which was awesome. And as someone who was reading The Walking Dead for many years, I'm sure Brian, to him, it looks jarring, right? Because if you've been reading this issue and you're used to it in a certain format, black and white, it would look really bizarre to start reading it in color. That being said, they needed to do something vastly different to recapitalize on all 190 plus issues to get people's attention. If they had just reprinted them as is, I mean, what's the difference there between a Walking Dead trade and a regular comic? So to color them all, I think that was a pretty neat idea on their end, and I think it is going to work. But for some readers like Brian, I don't know if he's going to collect them as a collector, but as far as readers, it will definitely, I think, a negative or positive, it will have a different feel just from it being colored, because the colors are going to set the tone. The colors are going to set the whole feel of each scene. Whereas in black and white, you're relying on the inks, the pencils, and the lettering.
I haven't ever read a Walking Dead comic book. I never watched the show. I think that full color was the way to go. But for me personally, from a feel aspect, I would have preferred just like black, white, and red. And I think especially for horror and this kind of thing, that's more impactful than having it in full color. And even still, they're going to have to really stray away from bright colors, because I don't feel like this is something that needs a lot of bright colors.
Yeah, the preview itself is very muted.
Okay.
All the colors are very low, so that's one thing that even I was like, I wonder how it does look, because I flipped through The Walking Dead, but I've never read it religiously. And it does match the older covers, in which they weren't incredibly colorful, they weren't bright. The interiors match those old covers, so I think they are so far doing it the right way if you're going to color this at all. You had mentioned doing it in black and white and red. Image, go back on your idea now. Cancel this solicitation. Do all 190 plus in black, white, and red. Go through that whole run, and then go back to the beginning. Add another color, like black, white, red, and blue. It's the Kingdom of Hearts approach.
There you go. You know what? You leave Kingdom Hearts alone.
I will never.
You leave them alone.
I am complimenting them, because these gamers, these Kingdom of Hearts players, will rebuy every one of these editions and 1.5 and 1.2s and 1.8s. It's genius. I told them they should have done, when they released Kingdom of Hearts 3, they should do it in parts and then do special editions for each part on each console.
And I would have bought them too. So just leave me alone.
And you will. Okay? And I think it's great. Good for them. Image should follow that model.
Flipping on over to DC, or Marvel 2, as you are calling them now.
We need to come up with a good name for that, for sure.
I'll think of one. I'll work on it. I'll use my Palpa skills. I'll get you one soon. I'm already thinking. So anyway, DC has announced that Dick Grayson will regain his memories after the events of Joker War.
Previously known as Rick Grayson.
So different.
He will return to his Nightwing persona, fully starting with issue 75 of his solo series.
I didn't even know he was gone. How'd he lose his memories?
He got shot in the head. I forgot which issue it was. I don't know if it was in Nightwing or in one of the Batman offshoots, but he got shot in the head and lost his memories, and has since sort of taken on still a superhero persona, but not Nightwing. And since then, the really dedicated Nightwing readers have stuck on, but the ones that were reading it because it's like, no, they like Nightwing, they've over time dropped off.
But why did he pick Rick Grayson?
I'm not reading that shit. If they gave Damian his own ongoing again, great. Even if it's teamed up with Jonathan Kent Jr. or whoever, I'll read it. But I'm not going to ever sub to a Nightwing series.
Dan Jurgens from Superman will continue to write this series.
We have a Brocat reaction from Brian Shop 1, who said, quote, "It's about damn time." And he put it as a GIF. And I know a lot of Nightwing readers have been waiting and waiting. All right, when's Nightwing coming back? When's it coming back? And finally, we are getting Nightwing's return with number 75. That's how you do it. I'm sure the issue will be an extra $1 or $2 to celebrate the quarterly anniversary. I don't even know what you want to call that. But every time there's 25 issues, they used to do like a huge thing of it. And they still kind of do. So that's how you do it with Nightwing. It sounds like whatever happens in Joker War will have changes throughout the whole Batman universe.
Nightwing isn't my least favorite Robin, so there's that. Like, I'm glad he's coming back.
Yeah, Dick Grayson does have that, right?
Yeah.
Who is your least favorite?
The really whiny one. You let me die.
Jason Todd?
Yeah, there you go. Him. He's my least favorite.
Yeah, he's probably my least favorite too, although I like Kelli more than I like even fucking Dick Grayson.
Really? I think Dick Grayson's probably my favorite. I think Damien's number 1 and then Dick Grayson.
Dick would be a third, yeah, I think.
You know what I think it is, though? Because I was really into Teen Titans, and I really like him with Starfire, and I read a lot of fan fiction.
Well, there you go.
We figured it out.
And along with DC's recent changes, they also have confirmed that Batgirl, Batman and the Outsiders, and Justice League Odyssey are all set to end in October. The only surprise out of these was Batgirl because those variants by Middleton were keeping the series alive for a bit. But when your series is hanging on because of variant sales, it's probably time to go ahead and end it. Batman and the Outsiders and Justice League Odyssey was plagued from the start. As soon as Stepan Sajic was forced to change nearly everything in the book, and then he said, all right, as soon as I finish my little contract here, I'm out of the book, it wasn't what he wanted to make. So that one was screwed from the beginning, and we dropped off shortly after that. Batman and the Outsiders, I've been ordering subs only for months now, and no one's asking for it. So that one should have gone even sooner than it has. But like I said, Batgirl was the only surprise there.
I wasn't reading any of them, so I wasn't surprised. I was surprised they existed. We did get a new look at the Caped Crusader as designed by Jorge Jimenez, showcased in a retailer mailer from DC.
And this is going to be in issue number 100 of Batman. The costume is going to make a cover appearance in Jorge's variant of the comics set to release in October. I tagged you on this one on Twitter. What'd you think of this look?
It was different. I guess not what I expect from Batman, what I would expect for him to wear, like very bright, but I understand the meaning behind the suit. It's supposed to be, I mean, spoilers, right? Gotham is perfect now, so he has the opportunity to wear this perfect suit, which he doesn't have to hide in the shadows, technically, because Gotham's perfect. So he's not having to do as much. He's not having to be as stealthy to take down all these evil people.
And it seems like he has like a hologram, which we see some of already in the comic, but they make it really obvious that his gauntlet can create holograms out in midair. So when he's communicating with the Batcave or with the rest of the Bat family, that really comes in handy. But James Tynion, there was actually, when I looked on Newsarama and Bleeding Cool, how do you think the comments leaned on this thing?
I don't think they liked it.
That's what I thought too. I didn't think they were going to like it, and everything has been like, this works. This is really cool. That's not bad. I'm like, what the fuck? Are you the internet? The internet, you surprised me this time. They came through. That's funny. But James Tynion did say on Twitter, quote, "This is not Batman's new costume moving forward. This is a costume that appears in the Joker War story, but is not Batman's new suit moving forward. We only see him wear it in a dream sequence. It has a very, very specific story purpose," end quote. And I think we gathered that from the issue of this is when you have a perfect Gotham, this is when you can wear this suit. And we're never going to get a perfect Gotham because then we don't really have a Batman. Maybe in the far future, if they did like a flash forward and like an annual, maybe then we'd see it. And I overall think it is a kind of a cool suit, especially with the different gloss and different change on it, but it's really not the Dark Knight, right? I can see this being someone else's Batsuit, maybe a different Batman or a new Batman like they were hinting at when this whole DC Generation 1 or whatever G1 was happening, but not Bruce Wayne's.
Yeah, and beyond that, I don't ever see Bruce as being the type of person who would ever think Gotham is perfect.
Right.
You could sit there and say, look, we haven't had any crime in years, and he would still say, but it's not perfect. And it's not, he is never going to allow his mind to think of Gotham as perfect, ever.
I agree. And even when, let's say he were to accept, this is probably like a weird offset, and someone's probably written about this already, but if Gotham's crime rate were to go down enough where there's no more orphans being made of the city, and he's taking care of Gotham, and it's at its tightest and it's acceptable to Batman, do you think he would ever expand to other cities? Let's say Metropolis, or, he wouldn't give a shit about going into other hero cities. He would do what he does, or would he only care about Gotham?
I don't know. That's a tough one because, Batman's crazy, right? So yeah. I would almost potentially see as he's just so hyper-focused on Gotham that he, even to the point of doesn't let other people into Gotham, like almost turn into that kind of dictatorship, right? I think if he genuinely cared about other cities, he would have already been going out and trying to help them and doing what he could. But ultimately, I think Gotham's just his focus. And again, I think it would honestly get to the point where he would still patrol every night, right? Mm-hmm. Gotham would still be okay. And even if Superman showed up and he was like, hey, you want to come like help these other cities now? He'd be like, no, I need to take care of Gotham. And then he'd be like, well, Gotham's safe. And he's like, Gotham's never safe. And then like he'd swing away.
Much like the other heroes in the DC universe, anytime one of his villains goes into someone else's city, he's there to help clean it up.
Right.
You know, anytime that his city is affecting someone else's, he's trying to correct it. And we see that with the other heroes too. You know, when the Flash shows up because of Captain Cold in Gotham, or, you know, Captain Marvel was recently in Gotham teaming up with Batman, even though Batman said it wasn't a team up.
Of course
like that
not.
issue was really good too. So yeah, I'm curious how they're going to use this suit. He said it's a dream sequence, so I'm sure we'll get a glimpse into this utopia that Bruce will never reach, and I think that'll be a neat story point, as James was saying.
But now we're going to head on over into the big screen, a topic I don't feel that we've talked about enough ever, right?
Nope.
We never bring this up. But on Grace Randolph's Beyond the Trailer channel, Zack Snyder revealed some interesting things about his movie.
One of his quotes here is, quote, I famously advertised the runtime at 214 minutes. Now, in its current state, it's going to end up being longer than that yet. It's exciting to bring all this new material to the fans, end quote.
He couldn't confirm this runtime since the film is still being worked on. Did we really think it was going to stick to the 215?
The 214? Well, if we had gotten the theatrical cut of Justice League and if he had compromised and said, I just want my version that I created to go out, I think we would have gotten that. But when he went into these negotiations, and we've proven now that tweets do work, when we had that massive event last year during the negotiations, making release the Snyder Cut trend worldwide, that's when he had more pull to go, no, I don't just want the theatrical cut. I want the original film that I wanted to make. If we had gotten 214, I think it would have been a loss of sorts. Still a win because we're getting the other version, but that's the compromised version, as we said last week. Now that he's working on this version, he clearly got more funding to do more with it. This is all of the scenes that he wants at the length that he wants with the extra characters or whatever that he wants. So we're getting way more than the 214. This is why he's still working on it. We don't have the finished runtime to Zack Snyder's Justice League. This is no longer their Snyder Cut. This is a whole different film.
Right. And I think the second that he said, yeah, it's going to be Zack Snyder's Justice League and not just a Snyder Cut. Yeah, I already knew. Like, this is not a surprise to me that it's beyond 214 because he's going to get to do every single thing that he wanted to do and nobody's going to tell him no. Nobody's going to be like, this is too long, Zack.
Right. And I think that's really exciting. He also said, I didn't put it in the show notes, but Grace was asking how his version of Justice League fits into the overall DCEU, and he said that he still hasn't seen Justice League. He reiterated that, but he said that version of that film, because of what Warner Brothers wanted to do with the universe after he was let go from the project, Aquaman and Wonder Woman and all those movies after Justice League fit into the Justice League universe,
right, and
not into the Snyderverse anymore. So he said that in a way, this is a whole separate universe that has different outcomes to these characters. He says he doesn't know what they did with Wonder Woman or Aquaman or any of the characters in the theatrical cut, but that in his, he's not regarding those movies when he's making this. It's like a split in the timeline, if you will, without saying it. And if he does get to fully finish his vision and we get Justice League parts 2 and 3, then I think he's going to completely ignore, and rightfully so, what happens in Aquaman, what happens in Wonder Woman 84 and all those other films in favor of his vision. And I think us as the fans are totally okay with it. The only people that would be confused maybe are the general audience, but with this coming out on HBO Max, it's no longer for the general audience. They're not concerned with that. They're concerned with honoring the artist's vision and making this for the fans. He keeps saying that in his interviews. This is for the fans.
I definitely don't see a problem with him going that direction, too, if he finishes the rest of these movies. And, of course, obviously, I haven't seen the Zack Snyder's Justice League, but I don't really see how Wonder Woman wouldn't necessarily, and I'm not saying a perfect fit into it, right? But I don't necessarily see how it would make that much of a difference in the movie, because at least in my mind, I could separate, okay, this was like back in time. This was before all the stuff happened with Zack Snyder. So that doesn't bother me. Or even with Aquaman, okay, this is a different point in time. And even when we get Aquaman 2, it'll be different. I still want the trench. Where's the trench? That's all I'm waiting for. I want to see that horror movie where they're sinking and everybody's turning into the trench and nobody knows what's going on. I don't even like horror, but I want to go see this. Anyway, I'm for it. I'm going to watch it either way, right? Again, it's for the fans. It's for that really strong fan base. And you guys are going to be the ones who are spending all the money and spending $100 per movie that comes out, right? Between subscriptions and buying Blu-rays and giving Blu-rays to people. And, you know, just further showing the world that tweets and then backing up what you say is really what makes a difference in the entertainment industry.
And I know the fan base did get a little bit split up with some of what he was saying, because there's always been this argument of, you know, some fans saying we should not support the new DCEU that pretty much came out of Zack's no longer being a part of Justice League, and then that we should only support the projects that he's more or less involved in. In this interview, he did say that he's a producer on Wonder Woman 1984. He said he was excited for Matt Reeves as the Batman because he's a fan of the Batman. So he was saying that Matt Reeves is a fantastic director, and he said Pattinson is an amazing actor. So it's kind of like all these people that were going to boycott that because we want to see Ben Affleck back. It almost feels like he's saying we can have all of these things because we have the HBO Max platform, which could serve Zack Snyder's The Snyderverse, and you can have the Batman in its own separate universe. And from everything that the fandom, DC fandom, has been hinting at, they're fully embracing the multiverse. They're embracing different Batmen and different DC universes. And that's kind of the sentiment that Zack seems to be reflecting too.
Well, the thing of it, too, is the more successful these other franchises are, the more it helps overall, right? Because you have that excitement for Batman. But at the same time, and you just made me think of it, HBO Max is probably the perfect platform for Zack to get his vision out, because I won't say there are no limits on HBO Max, but there kind of aren't. He has a lot more freedom, whereas this Pattinson version is probably more meant for the general public. So, yep, release that. Batman is still going to stay relevant and make a lot of money and, you know, get that out to the audience, the general audience, where maybe if Zack had released his vision, it wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have made as much money as they wanted, and then he wouldn't have gotten continued backing, and et cetera, et cetera. It's much easier to track that and that sentiment through HBO Max. I learned about sentiment today in school, this week in school. So I'm just going to talk about that a lot this episode.
Just bring it up a lot.
I'm just and the sentiment of the words and the tweets they are using. Yes, exactly. So I'm on board with it.
Where a lot of that, I guess, fear came from on the fan base is, let's say that Justice League had been this massive success, then Warner Brothers would have no interest in taking a look at Zack's version, because they would have gone, no, we're going to go with the version that's made us a ton of money already and invest in that. So they were thinking if Pattinson's movie ended up making a shit ton of money, they would have gone, well, we're going to focus on this Batman and this universe instead and not worry about the Zack Snyder universe. But now that we are getting Zack Snyder's, he's coming out basically, I mean, he never said boycott anything, right? But I think a lot of fans are taking this as it's all right to support these other projects as well, because we have already gotten the go-ahead on Zack Snyder's Justice League. And as you and I have said, there's no way he doesn't put something in the film that sets up future projects.
Right. No, I think that this is great. We're going to get so much more out of Zack Snyder's universe than we ever thought possible. And again, as we've said for weeks, we're going to get his true vision, not compromised, not a studio saying, well, the general audience won't like this, so you can't do it. And I think just the platform it's on is a much better platform for him to be on. But beyond that, I think it's really going to change the way that people look at these kind of movies and how they're released and say, okay, something that was meant for a theatrical release, we brought it out on HBO Max on the streaming service, and it did just as well, if not better, in earning money. Because how many people are going to wait until that releases and then sign up for HBO Max? A ton, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of us signed up right away as a thank you, and I'm going to stay signed up. And I do really like HBO Max, so it's like an extra bonus. But you're right, there's going to be a lot of people that they will see a spike of signups. I think I'm already seeing it from customers that, you know, hadn't even heard of release the Snyder Cut until they announced Zack Snyder's Justice League. You know, I was having a conversation with a sub about BVS, and he's like, oh, I saw the Ultimate Edition on HBO Max, and I like all these extra editions it's a more complete film, and we were talking about it, and one customer, older customer, he's like, are you talking about the Zack Snyder thing? Is that what BVS was? We're like, no, it's actually Justice League. And then we gave him the breakdown on what Zack Snyder's Justice League is. So it's already reached, I think the general audience have some idea of there's a different version of Zack Snyder's something out there. And I think once this releases, those people are also going to be the ones that I like what they were doing with this. We're getting a lot of nostalgia flip-flopping now where it's like, I really liked Ben Affleck as Batman.
Of course.
So those people are going to sign up for HBO Max, and I think they're going to get a lot of that when that actually releases. Like, oh, I've heard a lot about that. Let me see what that's about, and then we'll get it from there. But speaking of HBO Max, they reported their earnings and their sub numbers on this new service.
As of June 30th, 2020, AT&T's Warner Media reported 36.3 million total U.S. subscribers to HBO Max and HBO. This is up from 34.6 million on December 31st, 2019. So about almost 2 extra million in 6 months.
AT&T CEO John Stankey reported that streaming hours are 70% higher on Max than on HBO Now.
We had the opportunity to kind of see both of these when it first released because our Roku still hasn't updated with Max. And so when I sign in there, I see the offerings on Now, and then we sign in, on our phone or on the other TV with Max, and we can see it there. And there's definitely a lot more offerings on Max, really great things that we're in line with that we want to see. So yeah, every time I have the opportunity to watch a movie and it's just me, I usually pull up HBO first to see what I can find.
There's a lot of great movies on there. Vudu has lost a lot of money from me because I look on HBO Max first and it ends up being there. And the same goes with Netflix, but HBO Max seems to have the newer films available right away. The investment in HBO Max was a hit, though, on AT&T's quarterly 2 earnings, which was expected, I think, reducing adjusted earnings by about $400 million.
I think they're going to earn that back easily.
Yeah, this is going to be a long-time investment for AT&T, and I think it will be several years before they start seeing some profits on it. Right now, their goal is to hit 50 million subscribers by 2025, and do want to offer an ad-supported, cheaper tier at some point next year.
I think that's a smart way to go. We definitely see it with services like Hulu, where someone's like, yeah, I'll invest $10 a month and watch some ads that I just don't pay attention to. Deals with Roku and Amazon are currently still at a standoff as AT&T wants to sell HBO Max as a separate app, whereas Roku and Amazon want to offer it as a channel under their umbrella of content stores.
So the whole deal here is Amazon and Roku would get a cut of every one of those subscribers if it's on their service, whereas HBO Max, if they offer it as a separate channel, which is what they want as a separate app, then they essentially keep way more of those subscriber dollars. And right now, Roku and Amazon are playing that waiting game of, well, most people sub through our devices, so if you don't want to jump into the umbrella, then you're going to continue to not gain subscribers. And HBO Max is instead playing, I don't, it's a tough situation that they're in because Roku and I guess it's the Fire Stick or whatever, those are huge platforms for a lot of consumers. And thankfully we have a smart TV that pulled up HBO Max as an app. But as you mentioned, right now on Roku, we use it as HBO Now. And if it's not available on HBO Now, we simply stream it off your phone and that's not an issue. But for anyone that doesn't have those phones or abilities or doesn't know you can do that, they're going, how come I don't have HBO Max on my Roku or on my streaming thing?
Yeah, it's definitely frustrating, and I'm thankful that we do have that workaround. And I would encourage anybody who is saying, I would like to be able to stream it, I'm unable to stream it, right, through my Fire Stick or my Roku. Look online, see what other people are doing, because it was a really easy fix for us where I was like, oh yeah, let me just pull it up on my phone and stream it through there, and my phone charges while we watch. And sure, I can't be on my phone and watch a movie at the same time, but at least I have. And let me tell you, it's way easier to search for what we're looking for through my phone than it is through the TV, because listen, first world problems, I gotta click through every letter, and it's just, I can't just type it in.
I fucking die every time the keyboard doesn't have the go all the way to the left and then it goes to the right of the keyboard, and instead it just stays to the left. I'm like, fuck, I have to go from A to...
I have to click 4 buttons back.
Yeah, it's... It really is first world labor.
The worst thing happened yesterday. I was trying to go to the right, and so I was on the left side, so I clicked left again, and it went back to, like, the main menu, like the search, and I was like, oh, shit, it doesn't scroll over. So then I went back, and then it took me up to A instead of down to V where I was, and I was like, son of a bitch.
Something I have seen, too, is people have been able to, I guess, hack their Roku and Amazon Fire Stick to make it so that you can access HBO Max, and that's beyond my skill set, but if you are at all tech savvy, there are options out there to do that.
Definitely worth it, though. I do like the offerings that we get on Max a little bit more than now, and it sounds like we're just on a standoff for the time being. You know what they're going to do? They're going to come out with their own fucking little stick.
I'd buy it. The HBO Max stick or whatever.
I would, too.
I don't know. That'd be a huge... I think that'd be a big misstep on WB AT&T's part, because everyone already has a fucking Fire Stick or a Roku. That's like the handheld thing, and that's the standard at this point.
Yeah, but the thing is... Listen, they're not going to do this. I'm just throwing this out there, right? But if you had one that was just for HBO, there's enough USB ports in the back of your TV.
Well, shills like me would buy it, but
I know.
That's about it.
But then if you lump that into your subscription service too, like, okay, you spend $50 for this, I don't know, you get like a free 6 months or something of it.
Oh, there you go.
And then you're saving money, and then they're not going to do this, guys. Don't get excited. They're not going to
call
do
it the Mother Box.
Oh my God, stop!
And have different special editions of it.
No, I would buy like 7.
Yes.
If they had, do they still show Game of Thrones on HBO? So you could have like a Game of Thrones version. You could have a Mother Box. You could have a whole bunch of different ones, right? Just reskin them.
The sound, well, okay, reskin. I was going to say the sound's expensive because I'm thinking of molding, but you're saying the skin? Nah, yeah, that's fine. It works. And we had talked about HBO Max. Next week, we're going to talk about what is coming on the service. But this week, we've got what's new on Netflix, the August 2020 highlights, our second favorite streaming platform.
This is not the full list, just what pertains to Daniel and I, what we find interesting. But the first one on here is Transformers Rescue Bot Academy Season 2.
The reason I put this on here is I saw a preview of it, and it looks like something Leo would like. Because
awesome.
It's got cars transforming into fucking robots, and it's made for kids. Like, that Transformers brand, I didn't know it expanded this far into it, and now I'm like, I want to show Leo the first one, because it's another car thing he can watch.
I would love that way more than Blaze, so can we please watch this instead of stupid Blaze?
We'll try it today.
Which is all he asks for all the time, and I was like, I can't. And then my parents started showing it to him at their house, and Dad's like, is he watching Blaze again? And I'm like, yeah, Dad. He's like, no. So it's not a great... They need more shows, and I'm hoping Transformers is one of these where both kids and parents can enjoy it.
Next one on the list is The Magic School Bus Rides Again, Kids in Space. It's a Netflix original spin-off special. You kind of fell off the Magic School Bus, you and Leo did.
I did. Leo stopped watching it. He wasn't... I showed him... Several months ago, I tried to show him both of the different Magic School Buses, and he just, I don't know if it's a little too old for him right now because they do a lot of great things with science, and he probably just doesn't really comprehend what's going on. So I definitely want to get him back into it. I think it's a great show. It teaches kids a lot of really great concepts. I know I learned a lot from it. Even when I was an adult, I'd go to work and be like, I learned this on the Magic School Bus.
Glad it's still going, and a short list this month, but a big one for you is Lucifer Season 5, Part 1.
I am still amazed when people post on my Facebook, like, did anybody know about this show? I'm streaming Lucifer right now. I'm like, where have you been? It's so good.
The way Season 5 and 6 are going to be rolled out into Netflix is they're going to split the season into 2, kind of like DC Universe did with Harley Quinn. So do you care at all that they're splitting both seasons so you can't really binge it?
I mean, in the perfect world, right, it would be one season released at one time so that I could binge it. Am I happy that I'm getting a season 5 and 6? Yes. So however that needs to happen, that's amazing. And I'm excited that I get to see more from them. And, you know, obviously there's got to be a reason behind it. So I'm sure that there's something that's going into it that will ultimately make the show better. And I also didn't really feel it with Harley. I don't know if you noticed that, but I did not feel like it impacted our experience. Also, I don't have time to binge. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of that is the fact that we probably didn't even feel the pause because we're like, all right, now we have time for an episode. And then we watched the next one. All right.
Right.
And by the time like this, what was it, episode 7 or whatever came around, we didn't even notice. We're like, okay, there's the next one. We're still on episode 4. So.
Right. But that does wrap up what's new on Netflix for August 2020.
Let's head into our Patreon shout-outs of the week.
Our first shout out goes out to Christian on Instagram at Christian Like the Religion 131.
He posted a post-workout selfie with the quote, "The world only makes sense if you force it to. Batman." End quote. What a great fucking line from not only The Dark Knight Returns, but BVS.
Batman is a great inspiration for working out. You're like, if Batman can do it with a concussion and stitches, I can do this sit-up too.
Next shout out goes out to Renee on Twitter at Yugi's Pokemon.
Renee has been streaming Final Fantasy XIV online on Twitch. Twitch.tv/Yugi's Pokemon.
Yeah, it's spelled out Yugi's YUGIS PKMN. Do you remember that in the Game Boy? Was it Game Boy or Game Boy Advance where they had the little PKMN as one of the...
Game Boy Color.
Was it Game Boy Color?
Yeah.
Was that even in Red and Blue also, where you had that little bit?
Yeah, it was... I'm pretty sure it was in that one. I remember Pokemon from forever. I think they just didn't have enough character space in the older games. But yeah, it's awesome. It's a little tidbit. Leo will probably be like, what's a Pokemon? And I'll be like, Leo, calm down.
Next shout out goes out to Corey B on Twitter at Comictropolis.
He said, quote, #Funko Virtual Con opened at 5, was in checkout at 5:03, stuck in shipping calculation for 15 minutes, sold out. Bummer. End quote.
Yeah, the Funko Virtual Con, and this happens every year with them, the site was a fucking shit show, and I think it was worse this year because there was no San Diego Comic-Con, so everyone that normally gets those exclusives in California went to the online store, and that's where they had the Ra's al Ghul pop, and that's, a lot of people were like, all right, check out, and they're trying to get the Mewtwo Flocked one, the Vulpix Flocked Funko Pop, all these great Funkos that are on there, and when you added them to your cart and you went to check out, it put you in this queue, and then eventually it's like, no, but they're sold out, and it was just a fucking mess. I know IDW had some San Diego Comic-Con exclusive variants that they put up for Sonic the Hedgehog, TMNT, a lot of great covers, and that was another one they launched on a Tuesday, and the whole thing went down, and they're like, we'll try it again tomorrow. They did it on Wednesday, and all their comics showed up as completely sold out, and everyone's like, oh, damn, like I was like, damn, I missed out on that. I wanted to get the Super Sonic variant, and then Treasure Hunting Sonic got back to me, and he said, hey, these are up. They're up now, and I went, I'm like, holy shit, they are. So I shared it to Scott and Al as well, because I know they were looking for those variants, and they like to collect the variants too, and they were able to get them, and
that's awesome.
It's like, I don't know if the site went down again. I don't know what's happening with that, but everyone's San Diego Comic-Con thing that they did, from what I saw, and we're not collecting a ton of it, but it didn't go well. And it's just a factor of there was no show this year, and everyone's trying to do this virtual Comic-Con thing. And unfortunately, a lot of those offerings aren't really available anymore.
I think this is a great learning experience for them, though, because yes, San Diego Comic-Con wasn't available, but if you did something like this in addition to what you offer there, and I don't know that they would because you wanted to be like special at San Diego Comic-Con, right? But if you did it in addition to, how many more could you sell? And also, how are you going to beef up your site for next year?
Right.
to make that happen.
Next shout out here goes out to Shane M on Twitter at S_Miller_27. He's been a little bit MIA lately.
Oh, no. Yeah. It looks like he has been lost to the Matrix, got an all new Power PC, and has been a stranger on Discord lately.
He's diving in full onto this Power PC, playing all kinds of online games, and every now and again he'll peek into Discord, but he's definitely enjoying his new toy.
That's awesome. And our final shout out goes out to Abdul Red Haji on Twitter at R Gadenfar.
When actor Alan Tudyk tried to defend Joey Whedon on Twitter from Ray Fisher's comments, Abdul Redha responded with, quote, "You weren't there, so shut the fuck up," end quote. Perfect response.
Yes.
Shut your fucking mouth, Alan.
You weren't even there. Stop it.
I know Ray Fisher most recently was talking about how his barber for Zack Snyder's Justice League did not get any credit in the film. I don't know what the official name is for that position in movies. Are they still considered like makeup or whatever?
Yeah.
Hairdresser maybe?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's the official term of it, but he was asking them and begging Warner Brothers to put him in the credits and they wouldn't. And when he approached Zack and when they were talking about making Zack Snyder's Justice League happen, he said, "I just want one thing for him to get his credit." And Zack's like, "They wouldn't put his name in the credits?"
Aww.
So we're going to get that in Zack Snyder's
That's
Justice
awesome.
League. More justice being done with this cut. And that also started that dialogue among other actors and stunt people and everyone on Twitter saying, these people need recognition as well. These are the people that make these actors look good on the big screen. It's not just about the camera work.
Well, I'm glad he's going to be getting his recognition. You know, the whole movement is going to be taking a picture of his name in the credits and posting
Damn right.
it.
Yeah. We'll launch a whole donation campaign and make some good out of this like always.
Right. That's awesome.
Toxic movement, though.
So thank you so much, Abdul Redha.
We got one more at the very end there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, the last shout out goes out to Brocat Core. Jimmy, thank you so much for your Patreon support. If you have a Twitter or an Instagram or something you'd like us to highlight, Jimmy, let us know, and we will absolutely do that. But otherwise, we are very grateful for Jimmy, Abdul Redha, Shane, Corey, Renee, and Christian for your Patreon support this month.
If you too would like your shout out every single month for as little as $1 a month, that's 25 cents an episode, sometimes less, you too can become a Patreon backer.
If you'd like to be heard on the podcast, I've loved all of the comments on the news stories, but if you want to be heard on the podcast, leave us a voicemail. There's a link in the description of today's episode, but you can also head on over to speakpipe.com/thereasonsimBroke, 90 seconds or less, and you can be heard on next week's episode.
But of course, like we say every single week, our podcast will always be free. The best thing you can do is let your friends know about us. Spread the word. Help get more votes to nominate us for the Podcast Awards.
As voted on by you, it is the comic book highlight of the week.
This week, our comic book highlight is Batman number 95. This is Joker War Part 1.
This is written by James Tynion IV, art by Jorge Jimenez. I looked in the book. They no longer put the colorists, I guess, on here, or inkers or letterers. There were only the 2 credits. One of few changes that we want to discuss with this week's issue, but this one voted on by Twitter from all of you, Joker War Part 1. I ended up flipping through the book. I think it looked interesting enough for us to talk about and offer it up on the poll, and that's the one you guys wanted to hear. What are your thoughts on Joker War Part 1?
There was a lot going on in this. I think I was pretty confused. I haven't been really keeping up with comics in general. There's just, life is busy, and right, it's all about priorities and where I need to focus my time. But essentially, the Joker has taken over, I was going to say Wayne Enterprises, and he's now a multi-billionaire, and he's using this money essentially to take over Gotham, and Batman's trying to get back in, and Punchline's there. This is the first time I've seen Punchline in anything. I haven't read her. Don't like her. Really don't like her. And there was just a lot going on. I don't know. Let me hear your thoughts first.
I hadn't been reading Batman either when they switched over from Tom King to James Tynion, and I like James Tynion, but I feel like he does team books better. He did Detective Comics with DC Rebirth and before then too, and did a great job on there. I really liked how he built up the Bat family in this unit. But when he started doing Batman, I think we gave it 2 issues and we were like, it's not really for me, and unsubbed to Batman from there. And then re-jumped on with Joker War Part 1 because it does sound like whatever happens here is going to affect the rest of the Bat books that we are subscribed to. So it's like, all right, let's at least read the first couple of parts of Joker War. And it feels a lot like the Detective Comics run, but obviously without all of the Bat family team members. So there is that part of it. But as you mentioned, we haven't been keeping up with it. So characters like Mr. Graves, I understand he works with the Joker. He's more of the financial side of Gotham and I guess more of a politician than anything else. And I could be wrong. Maybe he was kicking ass in previous issues and has some kind of signature weapon. I don't know. But to me, it seemed more like a corrupt politician that also worked with the rest of the villains. And Bruce Wayne is broken, Batman is broken, there's no Alfred, there's no help from the rest of the Bat family. I think James Tynion was saying that his relationship with the rest of the members is broken, even like with his son and with everything that happened in Teen Titans. There's a rift between Damian and Batman, so he really doesn't have that support right now. I didn't even see Catwoman in this issue, so I don't know if there was some problems there between the two characters. But this is set up as, okay, here, your typical comic story of, and I don't mind it, I like it, of this is your character, and let's see how he gets out of all of this. And this is his low, and we're building up to his low point, and let's see how he makes it out. Whether it's for the better or for the worse, he's obviously going to win at the end of all this, but he's not going to be the same. And that's kind of what I'm getting out of this first part of it.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with your sentiment.
Jesus.
I can definitely agree with that viewpoint. It really just felt like to me, though, and again, I don't have, what's leading up to this, but it's just kind of like, let's make every bad thing happen all at once. And it was just too much for me, especially getting back into it. It was just too much. And I was really craving those more simpler times where it was just Batman versus the Court of Owls. Here's just this random thing that's only affecting this one thing. Like reading through this, my mindset was, why is anybody still in Gotham? Legitimately, why are people still in Gotham? And it felt like almost too overboard of, yeah, the people who live in Gotham are just dudums. They're just there. They just all want to be killed. Obviously, Joker killed so many people in this book. And everybody in Gotham's got to know they could be next, but they're still doing it.
They've answered that before in one of the annuals, I think. And I think it was from Batman's perspective where he said, well, one, people can't just move out of Gotham because it is a lot of the poor population can't just up and move to Metropolis where it's fucking like California over there, right? Like everything's expensive.
Right.
But Batman said that the people of Gotham take ownership of their city, of all the bad in it too. They refuse to leave because they believe in a better Gotham. They believe in that bat signal in the sky. From what I remember, that's what the comic was like trying to symbolize. And I know you and I wouldn't stay there, but we're not as strong as the Gothamites.
I guess not. I don't know. Those people are stupid to be like, well, I could be Joker toxin tomorrow, but I guess I'll just keep going to work.
Well, everything in Gotham's crazy, and it's all right. That's what makes Gotham Gotham.
It was just, this issue was too much. I'd like to read the second one to see where it goes, but I really don't like Punchline. I don't think and it's not just because I like Harley so much.
Yeah, tell me.
She's just not a likable character. She's almost too conniving. Why is she with the Joker? Why isn't she doing her own thing?
Well, the whole, that's what James Tynion was saying, is that she's like the non-redeeming version of Harley Quinn, where she is more than a henchwoman. She's the devil whispering things in Joker's ear. And whereas Harley Quinn, she's evolved into this very likable character at this point. And I don't know if James Tynion felt that was still missing now from the DC universe because Harley has changed. But I feel that Harley was never quite this evil to begin with, even in the animated series or in the comic books. And again, that could also be James saying, well, she was never that level. We need a character that is that for the Joker. And I think it's still very early. We know next to nothing about the character. I think the hype is overblown because people think that she's going to be the next Harley Quinn.
She's not. I'll tell you right now.
Harley Quinn is Harley. She's special for her own reasons. And so far, I haven't been captivated by Punchline the way I was from that very first episode of Batman the Animated Series that Harley appeared in. And Punchline doesn't have that magic for me, at least.
Well, I think what was so special about Harley, too, is she was the lightness to the Joker. So Joker, his whole point is, haha, I'm funny, everything's a joke. And Harley really kind of, and while it wasn't a joke, right? Murdering people isn't funny. Harley made it a joke. Like, she really almost toned down his crazy, the evil things that he was doing, and was just very likable in that fact that, she could be around somebody so dark and was obviously crazy herself, but she still had that kind of lightness and almost innocence about her that I think is what a lot of people gravitated towards. Punchline, she's just an evil bitch. I do not like her. She's showing up with her high ponytail, and I knew then. I was like, nope, showing up with that high ponytail. I don't like her costume. I just don't. And it's not just because I like Harley more. Probably it is because I like Harley more. But I just think she's too dark, and she just takes the Joker down a much darker, more crazy role to where there's absolutely nothing redeeming about him.
I don't think Joker is influenced even by her, though. I think Joker will always do what he wants to do. And I think Punchline is either going to help him get there or she's not. But for us, the readers, I'm not benefiting from really the character being around. Her going hand-to-hand combat with the fucking Batman. When I read her origin in that Joker 80th special, I'm like, what is... And maybe it's because we don't know anything about her, but it's like Batman would have immediately fucking knocked her out.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? But it's comics. I get it. For the story's purposes, they needed to do what they needed to do. There's our thoughts on Punchline. Like, maybe it'll change over time. I don't know. So far, though, just another character. And that's also what James was saying, because they were like, you introduced this Punchline character and you didn't give us any warning about, people should have ordered up or whatever. And he's like, I've been introducing characters since before Punchline, but this is the one that people gravitated towards for whatever reason. And that's still my thing of like, yeah, for whatever reason. I think it's mainly speculator driven, to be honest with you, where they want this to be Batman Adventures 12 and it's never going to be because there's too many copies of this out there. But I just hope for actual fans of Punchline that the character does evolve into something way more interesting. And I think for the sake of regular readers or people that aren't on board with Punchline, because we do want more interesting Batman characters, and I wouldn't mind having more characters in the Batman or DC universe in general. I think he has one of the best rogues gallery out there, and maybe one day Punchline will be a worthy addition to it. And I hope for the fans of the comics that we get more than just even Punchline.
If you read Punchline, you like her, you don't like her, let us know on Twitter at Reasons I'm Broke, at Kelli. I would love to argue with you about why Harley's better all day long.
But she will check her Twitter once a week, so heads up.
Only once a week.
As a reminder, we do put up the poll for New Comic Book Day every Wednesday, and you too can vote in on what we cover each week. But let's head into the final segment of today's show, what Kelli and I have been doing this week. It is the Brocat Block.
One thing that is actually wrapping up this week is the ability to nominate us for the podcast awards.
It is crunch time. July 31st is the final day to nominate us under People's Choice and Games and Hobbies for this year's 2020 Podcast Awards. We're trying to go for the 4th year in a row nominated on Games and Hobbies, 1st year ever nominated under People's Choice, and 2nd year in a row to win under Games and Hobbies for this year. So if you head on over to podcastawards.com, there's going to be a link in the description of today's episode. All you need is an email login. If you voted last year or the previous 2 years before that, you can log in using the exact same credentials. Go in. We'll be on the pull-down menu under People's Choice and Games and Hobbies. Submit, vote before the 31st, and then next month is when they go through the whole process of we submit our videos, they go through the nominations, they go through the voting, and then they choose their winners from there. And then I believe in September is when they're going to have the full ceremony. So that's when we'll know. But right now, crunch time. Make sure to also select yourself to be considered as a voter for the 2020 Podcast Awards. You got to check off that box. The more brokettes we get on there, of course, the better chance that we will end up not only winning for the 2nd year, but maybe getting nominated for People's Choice for the first time ever. But that's the focus right now, just getting nominated.
It's a super easy process. If you haven't done it before, it takes maybe 5 minutes to sign up, go in, and go through the drop-down box. And we are under the Reasons I'm Broke.
Had a brokehead question here from @JeremyORR13, who asked, quote, DC Universe has removed the yearly subscription option. You can only get it month to month. Do you see this as a sign that the service will merge content with HBO Max, or is it more likely that they are just playing it safe? End quote.
We did have a response from Brokehead @Morrison_Mark, who said, quote, I don't see why they wouldn't merge content. It would help the flagship HBO Max and get better exposure for the DC original content, end quote.
So a lot of speculation here because it is an odd move to remove the yearly option. To me, that tells me that there isn't a long-term investment in their minds for DC Universe, because why else would you remove the yearly content? But at the same time, they also offered the extra $5 a month option to get HBO Max, and if you had HBO Max, the extra $5 option to get DC Universe. So they were kind of trying to get everyone to sub to both services for as long as possible, I guess. But so there's kind of two things happening here where one, they're saying it's still going to be around. The other, they're saying it's going to be, I guess, a part of HBO or not going to be around in another year.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fact that Zack Snyder's Justice League is on HBO Max and not DC Universe also tells us something else, where why put this huge DC movie on not the DC Universe specific app and instead on HBO Max. So I do think the future is HBO Max. They obviously have plans for Max until 2025. I do think it's more likely that DC Universe is going to merge to HBO Max. I just don't see what the logistics or how that's really going to happen, especially if they added that extra $5 a year option onto it. The only thing is maybe when they send out the cheaper version where it's ad loaded, where it's like, all right, you can have that version for whatever, $10 a month, or you can, instead of paying $20 for both services, you pay $15 and it's ad free and you get DC Universe. So that's the only way I can see them kind of switching it.
I would almost see that they keep DC Universe, but keep that service really for the online comics. So you're really going to have all the shows and everything merge over into HBO Max. Mm-hmm. And then even within HBO Max, a button like that you could click that would take you over to DC Universe if you wanted to read, or maybe even have different specific DC content that maybe wouldn't do as well on HBO Max, but you could still go back and look at those things. So I don't think we'll ever completely see DC Universe go away, but at some point the two will be more interwoven than they are.
Yeah, you mentioned like the channel buttons. If you go into the menu, they already have like a DC button on there, so they could just throw it all on there and that'll work. I know if DC Universe ends up just becoming a digital comics platform like Comixology and all of them, easily going to cancel because we're mainly, I don't read any of the digital comics on there. It's not for me. I like my trade paper. If I want to read Old Green Lantern, I pull out the trade paperbacks. I don't pull up the app. And if I want to read something I don't have, I just don't read it. I like to own the physical copy of it. But we do watch it for the cartoons, the Bruce Timm universe, Harley Quinn, of course, the original content. But some of that is already making its way to HBO Max. So I unfortunately do think, a year ago we thought, nope, it's still going to be here. We just renewed for another year. But now that they removed that option, I think that does tell us that everything is moving over to HBO Max. And that does help, I think, if you're going to focus on one streaming platform and you want to retain those subscriptions, you move those DC shows over to HBO Max and enrich that content.
Right. We'll see. You'll hear from here first when they make a decision.
Great question. As always, you can submit those over to us on Twitter or on Instagram. But outside of that, what have you been doing this week?
I got an awesome night in where you were out and Leah was out and it was just me and it was so nice. It was really great. I went and I picked myself up a pizza and a bunch of junk food and I took a bubble bath, which I haven't taken a bath since like before Leah was born. So we're talking 3 years, right? And my friends were making fun of me because I sent them a picture of my setup and I had this plate of food sitting on top of the toilet next to the bath. And they're like, why is your food on the toilet? I said, find me another place to sit food, right? I had my mini donuts and my chips and dip and some, it was so good. So that was really nice. And then I watched Crazy Rich Asians. I've been wanting to watch it for a while. I've heard great things about it. It was on HBO Max and they took it down, so I had to rent it through Vudu. But really great movie. I enjoyed it as a romantic comedy, right? I was like crying. I was like, oh my God, this
you
is
were
so good. I was, because it was so sweet. And really, really enjoyed that movie. I'm glad I took the opportunity to watch it, even though I had to rent it, but it was real cheap through Vudu, so that was fine. And it was a Warner Brothers movie, so I figured you would be happy.
Did you search HBO Max first to see?
I did.
Okay.
So they had it up there maybe 2 months ago. And so I was like, yeah, this is on my list. I'm going to watch it. I really want to watch it. And then I went back to try and find it last week and it wasn't on now. And I tried to pull it up on my phone on Go or on Max and it wasn't there either. And then I tried again last night before. And my online research told me now they just pulled it off of any streaming service. You just have to rent it.
Gotcha. My DC woes continue at the comic shop. Anyone that doesn't know what an FOC is, it's a fine order cutoff. Shops do it every single week, but It's Diamond and DC now telling published comic shops, hey, here's the titles that you put in your final numbers for. Let us know if you need to adjust up or down or what, because we put in numbers for those books 2 months ago. So 3 weeks before it comes out, they're like, what are your final numbers? And it helps. It's awesome. It's great. It would suck having to figure those numbers out 2 to 3 months in advance. But now that it gives us those 2 months of who wants to sub to this, all right, we have way more subs to this now. Let's up our numbers. So that normally is done on Monday early mornings / Sunday nights. It depends on your shop schedule. But for DC now and their separate distributor, which for us it's UCS, they want theirs on a Friday, and I do mine on Monday. And we do our inventory on Sunday. So now we have to do inventory on Friday for DC, just for DC special. And then just for DC special, put in the final order numbers, which I'm normally off on Friday. So I have to work into the schedule. Who's going to do the inventory? How am I going to do my numbers? And then we have to do the rest of the publishers like Marvel, Boom, Image, everyone that's stuck with Diamond on Sunday and Monday like normal. On one side, it splits the work, so there's less of me to do on Sunday, but now I have to do extra work on a different day that I normally wouldn't have to. And it creates, once again, 2 to 3 to 4 times the amount of time and work in labor alone, just so that we can put in numbers for Marvel 2, which is DC right now. And they're still playing the numbers with the Batman 3 Jokers. I put up a thing on the new comic book day group for my store of, look, full transparency here, we can't get these 3 Joker variants unless we order times 50 of each cover. Who's interested in these? Let us know below. If we get close to that number on each cover, then maybe we'll see it as worth ordering. But just a heads up, we may not get them because we're not going to sit on 150 copies of Batman 3 Jokers #1. I don't know. It seems like it'd be a forever seller, but I don't fucking know. And it's an expensive comic. I think it's $6.99.
Wow.
So for comic shops to order 150 copies plus the main cover plus cover B, you're looking at 300 copies of this fucking book. Are that many people going to want it? High-end books, subs get 60 to 100 subs, but for fucking Batman 3 Jokers, now you're stuck with 200 It's a fucking mess. And it's another sign of it's not cool. It's another change in the whole system that I have to now work into the schedule and start getting used to. And eventually we'll have a system, but it doesn't change the fact that it'll forever always be a time sink that we have to do these things separately now just for DC. We're already doing shipping on Monday and on Tuesday for DC and Marvel. Normally I wouldn't need that second person on Monday, but now I do because I got to break down and count the DC shipment, report the damages, which I think I told you. I have to take pictures of the damaged books now and send them off to UCS, where Diamond just says, tell us how many damaged copies you have, send them back, and then we'll send you the replacements.
Because we already shipped the things we needed to ship. If they're broken, whatever.
We have other things to ship in those boxes there with your Archies and Batman, so go ahead. They overnighted me my G-Fan, Godzilla magazine. I'm like, fuck yeah. All in one box. A lot of empty space, though. Kind of suspicious, but going back to DC, we hadn't talked about it in the issue, but this issue of Batman 93, I noticed that it had that horizontal digital formatting that their digital books have. I'm like, is that only for Batman? If they did it for Batman, they must have done it for everything else. I flipped through our Detective Comics, same fucking thing. So they're now changing it so that their artists have to follow the digital format of breaking up a page into top 3, and they are now making all of their books digital friendly first rather than comic friendly. And it's exactly what I feared. And now I know where their intentions are. If anyone's confused that doesn't know what I'm talking about, pick up a Detective Comics or Batman from right now. You'll see every other page, there's the top third of it is horizontal, a big horizontal page. And if you flip through the comic and keep your eye line at the horizontal line, it matches the other horizontal lines in that same panel. And they do that because it's digital friendly. When you're reading it in horizontal on your phone or on your tablet, it fits perfectly with your screen. And then they break out the rest so that they can then transition into each panel so that it works on phones. And with the comic format, it's like you have this big panel, but you're now breaking it up into the same pattern. So to me, it doesn't read as dynamically anymore. And that tells me at least that they make these books now for digital consumption over print consumption. And that's just, I don't know, like I love DC and I love their characters and I'll always be a DC fan, but on the comic side, they're really screwing us over on this. And I talked about last week, the reorders, the shipping fees on that. are astronomical compared to what they were on Diamond. So we're no longer going to do reorders on DC books because we are literally losing money on DC Comics if we try to reorder any. So to me, it's just telling me, all right, we've got 2 Marvel Comics out there, and then we've got the indie publishers. And thankfully, Marvel Comics is being less Marvel right now by sticking with Diamond, by letting us not going through a different distributor. But just as a heads up, comic shops are going through this transition period, and don't be surprised if their focus is more on the publishers that care about them, like the independent publishers and to an extent Marvel Comics, than DC and what they're doing right now with whatever changes they're making.
It's definitely frustrating playing devil's advocate, and I know it's a big distraction for you when the comic is set up that way. Me as an average reader, I didn't, notice, it didn't bother me, and unfortunately, I think that's how a lot of readers will be. But I mean, of course, tweet them, tell them you don't like it. Like we know the power of our tweets now.
Yeah, no, I think that's my main problem is not so much like, all the books now look the same because of that paneling. But to me, it tells me that at the forefront, they care about the digital platform more than the comic platform. A year ago, the comics looked very different than they do now. So that's my biggest concern out of all of this. Not so much like, all right, the panels are all going to look the same. I deal with it on Batman Adventures, but more of where's their mind at? And I think Dan DiDio's mind was absolutely with the comic shop. He was constantly in contact with comic managers and owners. Jim Lee isn't doing that work. He's not. And that's not his position. He's an artist. He's focused on something else. Maybe he got put into this position. I know in an interview he said that he woke up one day and they said, okay, now you're the head of this. So there's a lot of odd happenings right now, and it's that thing I said of like a year ago. The comics were great, the movies were not as much, but now they completely flip-flop. Now the movies are great they're giving us Zack Snyder's Justice League, but now the comics took a huge hit. It's like
the universe
we can't get that
like,
fucking balance.
You can't have everything.
No,
we gave you the perfect Zack Snyder Justice League, so you just can't have everything.
Yeah, but that makes life interesting, right?
Yes, that's one way to put it.
Gives us stuff to talk about.
I did, talking about life being interesting, I did have something else happen this week. I finally hit old age.
Yep, you
officially I woke up and I could not use my right shoulder. I slept funny. It was an all-day thing. It gave me migraines all day. I couldn't pick up Leo. I couldn't turn to the right. I couldn't use my hand for anything. And I was like, well, I guess it's just time for me to go now. That was it.
Welcome to the 30s.
Listen, I'm not ready. It was horrible. I just slept. All I did was sleep. So my shoulder still hurts. It's been over a day. It's feeling a little bit better, but it was just not great.
I think your midlife crisis might be worse than mine when we get to that point.
I think it definitely will be. I feel like this is my midlife crisis almost. 25 was really hard for me. I didn't have a fun time with 25.
Have you ever sneezed weird and then like you hurt a part of your back?
Yeah.
That'll happen.
More.
Well, see, at least you've gone through that now. So
I don't know. 30 just isn't looking great.
Yeah, but you'll appreciate 30 when you get to your 40s. That's how I try to flip it in my mind of 50-year-old me will look back at this now and be like, you lucky fucking bastard. But it's not until you're there that you don't appreciate.
Right.
So I'm trying to appreciate it now a little bit. But it's tough. It's tough because you're not there yet. So.
Well, I'm happy for you appreciating 30.
No, it's a work in process. You got anything else before we close out today's show?
No, I think that's it.
Lots of changes, lots of conflict, but very much enjoy talking about that with the Emperor Papa Kelli and with you, Brocat Core. So thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode. I've been Tuber, Safety Tuber Daniel.
And I am Emperor Papa Kelli.
And Brocat Core, all will be well. Did you see that fan art of Vegeta and Bulbasaur that Scott tagged us in?
Yes, I did see. I check Twitter more than once a week. I saw it.
Do you think they'd be a good fit, Vegeta
I do.
and Bulbasaur?
I do, because I think Vegeta would be like, meh, 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 and Bulbasaur would still be cute and just going along with it, because he'd chill.
Why do you think that artist picked those two out of all of the characters?
Because those were probably their favorites. They know quality when they see it.
There you go. I like the tweet of when they were making Pokemon and they said, all right, number 001, Bulbasaur. They should have stopped there. They got it right the first time.
Just one. What if they made a game where you just raised Bulbasaurs? Would you play it?
Let's go Bulbasaur, right?
Yeah.
Of course I'd fucking play it. And I'd be, although me and the Bulbaganda group, which is now a shit ton of people, I think now I can say like it'd probably sell really fucking well. That Build-A-Bear Bulbasaur we did an unboxing for was going for $300+ at one point.
That's insane.
And all the Bulbasaur fans that didn't jump on right away were unfortunately having to be overpaying for it not overpaying for it because it's fucking Bulbasaur, but paying more than they needed to on eBay. Build-A-Bear made it available once again. They put it back on stock, immediately evaporated again and sold out. So I hope they have another restock, but it goes to show you, anything Bulbasaur you see, you're better off in gratitude buying it. One, because they actually made a thing of Bulbasaur, but two, it might not be there forever.
So what you're saying is that Bulbasaur sitting right up there is worth $300.
No, the price has dropped a little bit because they made more. So right now it's at about $150 to $200.
I want you to look up and it's the same one later, but it just has little round eyes. So I replaced it with a Ditto Bulbasaur.
Or a Chinese knockoff.
Yes!
Where it's like all mismade, what I'm missing.
I want the bulb to be like on his butt instead of his back.
Yes, there you go.